To what extent was the First World War a key factor in America's return to isolationist methods? So in this question, what we have to do is quantify the significance of World War I in America's return to her isolationist methods. What other factors need to be considered, some context, an argument, and some development of that argument in the introduction. Then moving into our structure, following the plan we've set out in the introduction, PEA, EA, developed categorized paragraphs, and then making sure, as per the mark scheme, that we are linking these factors together. This makes the introduction critical, and it's the easiest way in which we can start to evidence that we have stepped up and progressed from GCSE. So following the First World War, America returned to its long old policies of isolation. Brief context. The key reason, so the principal reason, this is obviously the argument as to why America entered World War I in the first place, was the economy. It's a statement, but it's not answering the question, and I believe this was also the main reason, here we go, for America's return to isolationism. So an argument has been set out, with social, political reasons contributing. So we have an essay based upon 3 reasons why America returned to isolationism, and the student is going to be identifying the economic reasons as the principal one. Now, ideally then, this should be fleshed out a little bit, but the reasoning ends there. So ideally, I'd want some slight more development here as to why they're going to argue that case. It shows more forward planning and it shows conviction in the argument. After World War I then, bearing in mind that what we're looking for now is PEA and links at the end of the paragraph. After World War I, America entered a decade of great prosperity. Urbanization, electrification, mass production and consumer credit increased wages led to one of the biggest booms in America's history. It's all correct, it's all contextual, it's all economics, it's definitely not linked to the question yet. Because of this, America was able to maintain its isolationist stance, here's the focus on the question, as the economy was so prosperous it did not need any help from other countries. Okay. It was so rich that it did not need any economic involvement, meaning that it could effectively ignore the outside world and concentrate on its well-being. A little bit of repetition there. Therefore, I believe that the economy was a key factor in explaining, the key factor, I beg your pardon, in America's return to isolationist methods, because if America's economy had not been prosperous or had become a problem after the war, then America would not have needed help and therefore would have had to have some, and abandoned its isolationist ideas. Because of just how prosperous America was at this time, they could afford to run themselves without any outside intervention. They're trying to beef up their analysis here, though I do sense that what they're doing is repeating the same statements in different words. Along with this, the introduction of tariffs, well, that's an economic policy, but it's a political decision after World War I, showed just how America wanted to return to isolationist methods. The fact that the US government wanted Americans to buy American products showed that they wanted them to forget about the outside world and just buy products made in America. Therefore, in the short term, now this is interesting because long-term, short-term reasons for America's return to isolationism were not mentioned as an analytical tool in the introduction. And if the introduction had been planned well, that would have been flagged up. And now the candidate is telling me that there are actually long-term and short-term dimensions to this question. So that's an oversight on their part. I mean, well done for bringing it in, but ultimately it should have been planned for from the start. Majority increasing America's economy, which shows that the economy was the key factor in America's return to isolationist methods because of the US's government encouragement for American people only to buy American products, therefore boosting the economy. Social and political reasoning were also major contributing factors in America's return to isolationist methods. So here's an attempt at a linking sentence, but it doesn't actually tell me how the factors are linked. So we've got PEA in here, we've got long-term and short-term dimensions, so this is an encouraging movement, but it's not actually reflected in the initial planning in the introduction. And as for links between factors, I think we're talking probably more here about lip service to links rather than actually delivering them. white Anglo-Saxon Protestant WASPs had the major social and political opinion over America. Control, I suspect. The WASP elite had a long-term, and again that dimension, standing opinion of traditional isolationism for America. Also, they were also deeply conservative, and because of this, after World War I, they were increasingly seeing their deeply conservative values being challenged. Their traditional views were becoming increasingly popular as industrialization was taking place and mass immigration was becoming common. These rebellions, it's a term that we use, but it's not an explained one here, so there's a presumption being made that the reader knows what you mean, caused the WASP to respond, and this subsequently led to the United States returning to isolationism. Now, I personally think this is a very strong argument, and actually I think that predates the war. America had always been conservative and like this. So I would actually be arguing maybe this, in my opinion, is more important, but obviously the candidate's opinion is different. Therefore, the WASP's social and political sway over America's government was a very strong factor in America's return to isolationism. Because of the foreseeable dangers to their values, the WASP elite had to take action, and this led to the return to isolationism. But ultimately, the economy, the prosperous economy during this time, allowed the WASP elite to challenge the ideas, the new ideas coming into America, as there would be no intervention from the American people as they were benefiting massively from the economic boom, meaning that they could enjoy themselves and only think about themselves. They could not ignore what was going on around them, leaving the WASP elite to run America how they wanted it to be. Along with the major social persuasion of the WASP elite, politically, change was occurring, which led to the return to isolationist methods. In 1921, Warren Harding was elected as president, and in his famous speech he pled the return to normalcy. This was a major belief of the majority of Americans because of the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant roots. Therefore, the change in America politically is also an important reason. Now, I think we've got two different things being discussed here. The start of the Republican ascendancy based upon old conservative values, an attempt earlier on to quantify as well. So measuring the measure of the importance of the factor that is being discussed. America's return to isolationism, because this political change favoured the WASP beliefs and therefore gave them better sway over the rest of the American people, increasing the popularity of isolationist ideas. World War I helped both the opinion of isolationism and that of internationalism. One would instinctively look for analysis at the end of that paragraph, linking it firmly back to the question, and that's leaving me a little bit unclear. This is your analysis. This would seemingly therefore be an attempt to link. Following the end of World War I, in 1918, the US had to make a decision as to whether to embrace internationalism or follow the traditional values of isolationism. So clearly this was a linking statement. The human cost of World War I led to political and social unrest, which led to the idea in the US that being part of the wider world was in fact not actually worth it. Also, America had emerged from the war as the world's biggest economy, leading to the belief that America could survive on their own without any outside help. So once again, the student is coming right back to their original argument that economics, and you can't argue that they've constantly fought that corner and attempt to quantify that. Along with the social and economic reasoning, a political tension was building in the form of the First Red Scare. Because of these reasons, the First World War can be seen as an important reason for America's return to isolationism. The war brought together a number of conflicting ideas which eventually submerged as America, I think it should be emerged, as America becoming isolationist. However, I believe that the overriding factor was economic reasons. And for the foreseeable future, the economic boom and the fact that America emerged as the world's biggest economy. Ultimately, I believe that the war only brought together many different ideas socially and politically, with the economy being the main talking point and the key factor as to why America turned isolationist. The war was only a culmination of ideas, with the economic reasoning prevailing. So clear attempts to quantify the various arguments and motivations for America's decision. In conclusion, I believe that the economic boom following World War I led to America's economic decision to follow isolationist values. Even though the WASPs had a great amount to say in how America was run, this was only achieved due to the increased prosperity of America. Essentially, it brought them the luxury. Also, immediately following the war, America became the world's biggest economy, leading to the belief that they could isolate themselves with no help from anyone else and return to the long, old traditional policies of isolationism.